Do I step into the unknown with perhaps less stability, take a risk? Or do I go back to what I know already? We're so afraid to make a decision that we don't make a decision at all. And that's how we get stuck, right? Because then we're not moving forward at all. Hi, and welcome to a new episode of Beyonder, the podcast. I'm your host, V, and Beyonder, the podcast is all about going beyond borders. Not just country borders, but also inner limitations. And in my podcast, I share my own stories and stories of my guests about inner and outer journeys and how you can really create a life that aligns with what you want in your life and who you want to be, wherever you are in the world. And today's episode is inspired by a conversation that I had with someone a few days ago. And he told me that he was thinking about going home. He had been in Australia for about 2 years and he was on a career break. And he told me, I really love being here. I've been here for 2 years now, but I should go back home to the UK and, start my career again. My break is almost over. So we started talking about this and I asked him some questions and he was like, well, I'm actually not really sure if I want to go back because I really love my life here. But on the other hand, I have my family back home. I have my responsibilities. And it's almost like I have to choose between the freedom that I have now, but that doesn't really feel realistic, or I have to go back home where I have all of these responsibilities, but it doesn't really light me up anymore. And this conversation actually reminded me of a situation that I have been in myself some years ago. In 2018, I moved to Sydney for the first time, and I was supposed to only stay for 6 months. I was seconded from my job as an immigration consultant in the Netherlands to the office in Sydney. And I was supposed to work there for 6 months and then go back to my job in the Netherlands again. But already after a few months, I felt like, I really love it here and I don't think I want to go back. But I didn't even know if there was an option to stay. It didn't even cross my mind. Until the 6 months were almost over and I had a conversation with my boss at that time. And we started talking about this possibility of actually staying in Australia. And then I also had to make this hard decision of, okay, do I stay in this place, this new country that I love so much? And do I just quit my job in the Netherlands and start this new career here and leave all those responsibilities behind? Or do I go back to what I've been doing before that was very successful? And do I go back to my family and my friends and the life that I've built already in the Netherlands? The stability, in a way you could say. So it was really a choice of, do I step into the unknown with perhaps less stability, take a risk, or do I go back to what I know already? And eventually I stayed in Australia for 3 years and I'm so happy that I made this decision. But at that time, it really felt like the right decision, even though it felt like a big leap of faith. So in this episode, I really want to share more about this question. If you feel like you are in this in-between of, okay, I've been abroad for a while. Perhaps you have been traveling around, or perhaps you have been living abroad for a while in one place. And you're thinking, okay, I really love it here, but should I stay or should I perhaps go back home? And if you are in this loop of thoughts, perhaps, and you really have no idea how to even make this decision, I have a few tips for you that I want to share. And that may help you to get more clarity on how you can actually make this decision if you are in between those two big life choices of staying abroad or leaving and going back home. So how do you even know what you should do, right? How do you know if you're making the right step? First of all, if you're in this phase right now, you're not doing anything wrong. It's completely normal to feel like this. Usually everyone who has been living abroad for a while goes through this phase. and start questioning everything that has been happening so far. Because what basically happens when you move, first you have the excitement phase, right? So sometimes it's also called the honeymoon phase. It's like, everything is perfect. You really love your new life. You're really excited about everything. That can take a few weeks, usually, or perhaps the first few months. But after that, the adjustment phase starts. And this is really a phase in which things start to settle down a little bit, and you really have to build a new life, basically. It can feel like you're really starting from scratch. You're looking to find a new community, make new friends. Perhaps you are adjusting to a new job, or you are searching for a job or starting a new career somehow. And everything sort of starts to fall into place, but it also takes some time to adjust. Perhaps you are adjusting to a different language as well, or a different culture. So there's a lot going on at the same time. And after that adjustment phase is over, then you start to get more into a phase of settling, I would say. And it's like, you start to live your life like a normal day-to-day. You start to have new routines and habits, and everything starts to slow down a little bit more. And often when that happens, after a while, you start questioning things. You start asking yourself, okay, do I want to stay here? Or is this it? Like the first excitement is over, and perhaps you're enjoying yourself, but you also feel like, oh, now that things are normal again, is this it? Or you start missing things from home, or perhaps you start missing loved ones a little bit more, like family and friends. Because what happens is that you didn't just move countries, you're also changing a lot as a person. And basically you have removed things that used to define you, old structures, perhaps an old job, your old community, and everything is new in that sense. And you are really redefining what you actually want your life to look like. So let's reframe this question then, if you think about it. Instead of asking yourself, should I stay in this country or not? What if the real question is, what kind of life do I actually want to create? And then you really dive deeper into this question, right? Okay, am I choosing freedom versus stability? Am I choosing expansion versus safety? Am I choosing expectations that I might have or other people might have about my life versus living my own truth? And those are very deep questions to think about. Because if you think about it, if you decide to go home, you can still feel stuck and don't know what to do. But you can also stay abroad and still feel lost. So changing locations alone is not the answer. It just goes much deeper than that. It's really more on an identity and mindset level. So I want to share 3 tools with you that can help you to find some clarity when you're going through this decision-making process. The first one is to remove the should. So what I mean with that is, if you take away what you should do, then what's left? So what do you actually want if you remove what you think you should be doing? And in other words, you could say, okay, if no one had an opinion about what I would be doing with my life, no one cares about it. You can just do whatever you want, right? No one has an opinion. Then what would I choose? And this is a beautiful question. If you want, you can write it down and journal on it later. But it's really a beautiful question to really strip away all the expectations or pressure that you might feel from outside of what you think you should do, and to really tune into your own inner voice to see, okay, what is it actually what I want to do, what I want to create in my life. Then the second one is to really separate fear from truth. Because what happens in this phase is that a lot of decisions are driven by fear. For example, the fear of regret. This was a big one for me when I was deciding if I wanted to stay in Australia or not. And I was thinking, okay, am I going to regret moving back to the Netherlands? Or am I going to regret staying in Australia? And I was just answering both questions and see what would show up for me. And I knew pretty quickly when I dove into that feeling of regret that I would really regret if I would move back and didn't give myself the chance to explore what could happen if I would stay in Australia. Another fear that you might have is a fear of making the wrong choice. And that can really put you into this paralysis of thinking, okay, what if I make the wrong choice? What if I go back and I regret it? Or what if I stay and it's not the right decision? So fear can be really loud in that sense, and it can make you feel stuck in that loop. There can also be this fear of disappointing other people. If you choose your own path, if you decide to stay, are you disappointing anyone? And this also comes back to the first tip that I shared with you, right? Like, if no one had an opinion, what would I choose? This is very much linked to this fear of disappointing others because of those expectations that you feel that others have for you. And again, because this fear can be so loud, it can be really hard to listen to what's underneath that fear. And that is really where your truth is. It's in your inner voice. Because eventually all those fears can give you mixed feelings. Like the fear of regret, for example, can make you want to stay abroad. But then you have this fear of disappointing others that might want you to move back home. And then you have this inner conflict, right? Of like, okay, which fear is stronger? What should I do? What if you can release yourself from those fears and actually tune into what's underneath of it so that you can really listen to your own inner voice where your truth is? Because usually that voice is much more quiet than all those fears that are going on, because usually those can be pretty loud. So what can help with that as well is the third tip that I want to share with you. It's to really zoom out, because sometimes when we're in this mood and we're like dealing with all of these fears and going into this loop of what should I do? What if I make the wrong choice? It doesn't go anywhere. So sometimes what can help is to really zoom out of that and to tune into your future self instead of your present self. So instead of asking what feels like the right decision for me now, you can ask which choice aligns with the person I want to become. So to really tune into that future vision. So which choice really aligns with your future self, if you think about that. What do you see yourself doing? Do you still see yourself abroad? Or do you see yourself back home? And this is something that I often dive into deeper in my coaching sessions as well. Because it's often not about choosing the option that is most comfortable, but choosing the option that feels most aligned. And when you think about what I've just shared with you and you start reflecting on it, it can already give you some clarity. But what I want you to know as well when you work with this is that there is no perfect decision. It's only about making a decision and committing to it, because that's often where it goes wrong as well. We're so afraid to make a decision that we don't make a decision at all. And that's how we get stuck, right? Because then we're not moving forward at all. And basically, if you think about it, both options will require something different from you. If you think about staying abroad, what does that require from you? It requires growth in some areas of your life. And it can bring more uncertainty, because what are actually the next steps you need to take to stay abroad? But then if you choose the option of leaving, it also brings letting go of certain things, letting go of this life you've built so far. And it also means redefining who you want to be and what your life will look like when you move back home. And then the question is not, okay, which option is easier? But it's more about, okay, which option feels most true to me, which option feels most aligned to me, and which option excites me the most. So if you're in this phase right now, if you feel stuck in a way between two different lives or two different versions of yourself, really tune into those three things that I've just shared with you. And this is also exactly the work I do with my coaching clients, really helping you get clear on what's next and really make a decision that feels grounded. And then from that decision, know which steps you can take next. So if you want more support with that, you can always reach out to me. I will leave some details in the show notes so you can check that out. I will also share a link in the show notes to my meditations. Those are a great way to tune into that inner voice that I mentioned, to really get rid of all the noise and the loudness that might be going on in your mind, and to really start listening to that truth within yourself, to what you actually want. So I will share some links below as well for you so you can work on that. And as I like to say, at the end, it's not necessarily about where you live, but it's about creating a life that really feels like yours. Whether that means staying abroad and taking the steps abroad to make sure that you really create a life that feels like yours. Because perhaps it just means you need to make a few tweaks so that you really feel like, okay, yes, this is the place where I want to live, where I want to spend the next years, where I really see my future. Maybe you just didn't feel as clear about that yet, and that's why this doubt came up of perhaps moving back home. But maybe it's also thinking about, okay, what if I move back home and I close this chapter abroad for now? Does that mean that you're actually living a life that really feels like yours? Sometimes I've spoken to people who felt like, oh, I put so much effort into moving to this place, and now I'm finally here. I've spent some years here. I've built this whole new life, and now I have this feeling that I want to leave. Yeah, if that feels like the best option for you, if that feels like the option of no regret, for example, of really tuning into what feels most aligned to you, then that's the option you should go for. And as I said before, we often feel like there are expectations from other people or pressure around us of what we think we should do. So I hope this episode helps you to really get clear on that decision. Really think about what's true for you. I think that's the biggest takeaway, because no one can tell you what to do. It's really about your own decision, and there's no wrong decision. It's just about the decision that feels truest for you. Thank you so much for tuning into this episode. Don't forget to like, follow, subscribe. That will not only support me to grow my audience here on the podcast, but also you can stay up to date on future episodes as well. See you in the next one.